They tell you that being liked is the highest currency. That if enough people smile when you walk into a room, if enough voices speak well of you when you leave, you've succeeded. This is the lie you've been fed since childhood, a lie dressed as virtue. You were taught to be polite, agreeable, and pleasant, as if these qualities alone could open the gates to the life you wanted. But approval is not free. It comes at a cost so hidden most don't notice until they're bankrupt. To gain approval, you must give pieces of yourself away. Your opinions, your boundaries, your time, your dignity. Each small compromise feels harmless at first. One white lie to avoid offending. One silence swallowed instead of speaking the truth. One task accepted even though you're already drowning. It feels good in the moment like a drug. You get the smile, the nod, the pat on the back. But here's the truth they won't tell you. Approval is not love. Approval is a transaction. The moment you stop paying the price, the smiles vanish. The same people who once praised you will turn away without hesitation. You are not liked because of who you are. You are liked because of what you give. And when you stop giving, you stop existing in their world. The tragedy is that most people will spend their entire lives trying to refill this leaking bucket, convinced that if they just work harder, be kinder, give more, they will finally be safe. But you are never safe when your worth is decided by someone else's mood. The crowd is not your ally. The crowd is a tide. It will lift you one day and drown you the next, depending on which way the wind of opinion blows. And if you think you can survive by swimming with the tide forever, you'll one day find yourself in a place you never intended to go, too far out to return. And by then, you will realize the tide never cared whether you lived or drowned. It only cared that you kept moving where it wanted you to go. They never warn you that approval is addictive. Once you've tasted the rush of acceptance, it becomes a quiet hunger that sits under your skin, dictating your choices in ways you don't even notice. You begin to dress not for yourself, but for how others will perceive you. You speak not to express, but to be accepted. You avoid certain truths because they risk rejection, and you perform small, constant acts of self-erasure just to keep your place in the circle. At first, you tell yourself it's harmless, that bending here, adjusting there, is simply part of being a good person. But over time, those small bends become the shape of your spine. You stand crooked, not because life broke you, but because you willingly leaned toward every hand that offered a pat on the head. And still, it is never enough. No matter how much of yourself you give, there will always be another demand, another expectation, another subtle test you must pass to keep the smiles coming. It is a game without a finish line, a debt that grows the more you pay. And here's the cruelest twist. The people whose approval you crave are often the same ones who will quietly resent you for needing it. They sense the weakness in your hunger, and whether they admit it or not, they will respect you less for it. They will take from you without guilt, because deep down, they know you will not risk their disapproval by refusing. And when the day comes that you can no longer give, when exhaustion dulls your shine, they will look at you not with gratitude for all you've done, but with disappointment that you've stopped performing. In their eyes, you were never a person. You were a service, and services, once they stop delivering, are replaced. The most dangerous part of chasing approval is how invisible the trap becomes over time. You stop questioning it. You stop asking whether the people you're trying to please even matter, or whether their praise has any real value. You become so accustomed to shaping yourself for others that you forget there was ever a version of you untouched by their demands. And in that forgetting, something vital dies. You no longer live for your own standards. You live for theirs, even when they are unspoken, even when they are impossible. Your choices shrink to fit the narrow paths that keep you liked, and your voice grows quieter until it is barely your own. In the end, you are left with an existence that feels safe on the surface but hollow at its core. This is why so many people wake up one day in lives they do not recognize, surrounded by people who do not truly know them. Approval has cost them their authenticity, and without authenticity, no amount of praise can fill the emptiness. This is the truth you must face if you want to win without being liked. Approval cannot be the compass by which you navigate your life. The crowd's applause is fleeting, and it is often given to those who play the part, not those who stand in truth. If you build your identity on their validation, you give them the power to erase you. But if you step away, if you dare to endure the cold silence that follows, you will begin to hear something else. Beneath the noise of other people's opinions, there is a quieter voice, one that does not demand you perform. That voice is your own. And once you choose it over the crowd, you will finally be free, even if the world turns its back. They tell you respect is earned, but what they don't tell you is that there are two currencies for earning it. One is love, the other is fear. Most choose love because it feels safe, warm, and socially acceptable. Fear, on the other hand, is painted as cruel, manipulative, even evil. But history tells a colder truth. Fear is the currency the world never stops accepting. A man who is loved will be followed until it is no longer convenient. A man who is feared will be obeyed even when it is not. This is because fear is not based on emotion alone. It is rooted in self-preservation, in the deep, primal instinct to avoid pain, loss, or consequence. People may claim they admire kindness more than strength, but when their interests are at stake, they will lean toward those they dare not cross. And yet, the problem with chasing love over fear is that love is fragile. It bends under pressure, shatters when tested, and demands constant nurturing to survive. Fear, when earned through unshakable boundaries and undeniable presence, does not need to be fed daily. It becomes a silent guard at the gates of your life, keeping the worst intentions out. But fear has its cost, just like love. To be feared is to accept that not everyone will understand you, that your presence will make some uncomfortable, that whispers will follow you when you leave the room. You must be willing to be the villain in someone's story in order to secure your own. Most cannot stomach that weight. They would rather be liked than secure. But those who master fear as currency do not need constant approval to hold their ground. They understand that safety, influence, and control are rarely given freely. They are taken, and they are maintained by making sure the line between respect and consequence is never blurred. Fear, when stripped of its emotional weight, is simply recognition of power. Not brute force alone, but the quiet, unshakable certainty that you will not bend. It is the kind of power that exists even when you say nothing, when your presence alone alters the air in the room. People feel it not because you threaten them, but because they understand, even subconsciously, that you cannot be easily swayed, bought, or manipulated. The man who depends on being liked must constantly perform, adjusting his tone, his words, even his posture to please. The man who commands fear does not perform at all. He stands, and others adjust themselves. This is not the same as cruelty. True cruelty is born from insecurity, from the desperate need to control through harm. The fear that grants respect comes from clarity, a visible unwillingness to compromise your core. And here lies the paradox. When you build this kind of presence, you often gain a deeper respect than love could ever provide, even from those who dislike you. They may never smile at you in public, but they will think twice before undermining you. They will measure their words in your presence. They will hesitate before betraying you, not because they suddenly agree with you, but because they understand the cost. That is the nature of fear as currency. It creates an invisible contract, one written not in words, but in the awareness that crossing you is a debt they cannot afford to pay. It is not a currency you spend recklessly, for the more you waste it on petty displays, the weaker it becomes. Instead, you invest it quietly, sparingly, letting your reputation do most of the work. And when it's time to cash it in, the return is far greater than anything approval could buy. Fear without respect is a brittle thing. It can make people obey you in the short term, but it will also make them wait for your weakness, sharpen their knives, and smile when you fall. Respect is what turns fear into something stable. Not admiration, not affection, but acknowledgement. It is the unspoken admission that you are not easily replaced, that your absence would cost them more than your presence. This is why fear must be tempered, not with kindness, but with competence. You do not need people to like you, but they must know that you are valuable. Value can come from many sources: skill, knowledge, decisiveness, the ability to solve problems others avoid. It can come from your discipline, your reliability, your ability to hold the line when others panic. Without these, fear curdles into resentment, and resentment always looks for an opening. The man who is both feared and respected holds an advantage in every negotiation, every alliance, every confrontation. People will speak against him in private, but defend him in public, not because they suddenly agree with him, but because aligning with his downfall is riskier than staying silent. And perhaps the most important truth is this: respect born from fear is not given, it is maintained. You must guard it like a fortress. One careless act of desperation, one moment where you trade your dignity for a cheap victory, and the entire structure begins to crack. People watch how you treat yourself as closely as they watch how you treat others. If you tolerate disrespect toward yourself, you teach them that your power is an illusion. But if you remain unwavering, even when it costs you, the currency of fear and respect grows richer over time, until you can buy things approval could never touch. Loyalty without love, cooperation without agreement, and silence when you need it most. Detachment is not indifference. It is not the absence of feeling, but the refusal to be ruled by it. In a world where everyone is desperate to prove their loyalty, their love, their outrage, detachment looks like rebellion. It unnerves people because it cannot be controlled. They expect you to react, to be angry when insulted, to be flattered when praised, to be desperate when threatened. But detachment robs them of their favorite weapon: your emotional dependence. The detached man can walk away from a deal, a relationship, a fight, without the tremor of loss in his voice. This does not mean he feels nothing. It means he has learned that needing less is a form of power. When you are detached, you are not swayed by the bait others dangle in front of you: approval, status, affection, validation. You see these things for what they are: levers designed to move you. Most people spend their lives as machines operated by someone else's hands, reacting to every pull of the lever. Detachment cuts the strings. And when the strings are cut, something strange happens. People begin to chase you. They sense, even without understanding, that you do not require them. And in that absence of need, they feel a kind of gravitational pull. This is why detachment is so often mistaken for mystery, because the detached person is never fully possessed by anyone. They belong to themselves, and that is terrifying in a world built on invisible chains. To master detachment, you must first confront your fears: the fear of being alone, of losing what you have, of being misunderstood. Once you can sit with these fears without flinching, you become immune to the games most people play. And when you are immune, you are free to choose without pressure, free to act without begging for permission, free to win without being liked. Detachment is forged in silence. It grows in the moments when you resist the urge to explain yourself, to defend your choices, to prove your worth. Most people cannot stand that silence. They rush to fill it with words, with apologies, with reassurances, desperate to close the gap of uncertainty. But the detached person allows the gap to widen. They understand that clarity is not owed to everyone, and access to their inner world is a privilege, not a right. This unsettles those who seek control through emotional pressure. They will test you by withdrawing affection, by questioning your loyalty, by creating crises that demand your reaction. Each time you refuse to play, you teach them a truth they cannot ignore. You are not a piece on their board. And yet, detachment does not mean coldness. It means refusing to chain your self-worth to anyone's approval or disapproval. It means giving without the hidden ledger of expectation. It means staying rooted in your values, even when others try to pull you into their storms. In this way, detachment becomes both a shield and a weapon: a shield against manipulation, a weapon against dependency. The man who is detached can walk through chaos without becoming part of it. And in doing so, he becomes untouchable, not because nothing can touch him, but because nothing can control him. In a world that thrives on reaction, detachment is the quietest form of dominance. It is the refusal to be moved unless you decide to move. And when you move, it is not out of fear, obligation, or flattery. It is because the move serves you and no one else. The true strength of detachment is revealed when you can watch someone leave and not chase them. When you can face rejection without needing to rewrite yourself to fit their approval. This does not mean you feel nothing. It means you refuse to let the feeling dictate your direction. Most people are owned by their attachments. They cannot imagine walking away from what they love or from who validates them. And so they are controlled. They stay in places they've outgrown. They tolerate disrespect. They shrink themselves to keep the fragile peace. Detachment cuts through all of this. It tells you that what is meant for you will stay without chains, and what leaves was never truly yours to begin with. In a strange way, detachment breeds a deeper form of connection, because you no longer cling, you no longer demand, you no longer twist yourself to be kept. Those who choose you in this state are choosing you freely, without the leverage of your fear. This kind of freedom unnerves the insecure, because they cannot threaten you with loss. And in a world where fear of loss drives most human behavior, the one who does not fear loss becomes unpredictable and therefore powerful. You begin to see that detachment is not the absence of care, but the absence of desperation. It is loving without needing to own, engaging without needing to win, giving without needing to be repaid. This is why the detached walk with an unshakable calm. They have made peace with the tides, and they know that whatever goes can be replaced, and whatever stays cannot be taken. Influence is rarely loud. The most dangerous battles for power are not fought with weapons or public speeches, but with whispers, timing, and the invisible shaping of perception. Those who understand this truth do not rush to win arguments. They aim to win the mind behind the argument. The silent war for influence is fought in boardrooms, dinner tables, and quiet exchanges where decisions are made long before the public hears of them. It is the art of positioning yourself so that others believe your ideas were their own. In this war, brute force is clumsy and obvious. Subtlety is the true weapon. A smile can conceal an attack, and silence can carry more weight than 1,000 words. The skilled player knows that the real victory is not in forcing someone to agree with you, but in making them believe they arrived at that conclusion by themselves. The unskilled waste their energy on open confrontation, trying to dominate through sheer will. And in doing so, they reveal their intentions too soon. The masters of influence stay in the shadows, allowing others to speak while they shape the direction of thought. They know when to withdraw, when to plant a seed, and when to let silence work in their favor. Influence is never about one decisive strike. It is about the accumulation of small, almost invisible moves that create a landscape tilted in your favor. By the time the opponent realizes the balance has shifted, it is already too late. The ground beneath them has been shaped step by step until every path leads to the outcome you designed. The greatest mistake in this silent war is believing that influence is a one-time event. It is not a single speech, a single favor, or a single victory. Influence is a living thing, built and maintained through consistent, deliberate actions. The most effective players never stop tending to it. They pay attention to timing, knowing that the same truth spoken at the wrong moment becomes useless, even dangerous. They understand that people are not swayed by facts alone, but by emotion, ego, and the subtle validation of their self-image. This is why true influence requires patience. You must learn when to hold back and when to apply pressure, when to let an idea grow in someone's mind without interference. In this war, your weapons are not swords and shields, but trust, reputation, and the careful control of information. Share too much, and you arm your rivals. Share too little, and you starve your allies. The masters know how to give just enough to keep people dependent on their perspective, while ensuring no one can act fully without them. Every conversation, every gesture, every choice of silence is a move on this hidden battlefield. And while outsiders believe events are unfolding naturally, the truth is that every step has been nudged, every decision slightly weighted, every outcome subtly shaped. The silent warrior understands that if you control the flow of belief, you control the flow of power, and that this control must be maintained quietly or risk being broken the moment the illusion is exposed. In this war, the loudest voice is rarely the most powerful. Those who shout and demand attention reveal their position and invite resistance. The silent player, however, operates beneath notice, influencing without ever appearing to hold control. They plant seeds of doubt or conviction in others' minds and let those seeds grow until the target believes the thought was their own. They manipulate the battlefield by controlling narratives, not through force, but through shaping what people think is true. This is why the most dangerous figure is often the one who seems uninvolved. The quiet advisor, the background supporter, the person whose name is rarely mentioned but whose fingerprints are on every decision. Silence allows plausible deniability. Influence without visibility cannot be easily attacked. The silent war is not about dominating every conversation, but about ensuring every conversation eventually leads back to the outcome you desire. This requires a deep understanding of human nature, their fears, their ambitions, their pride. A good strategist does not fight people's desires, they redirect them. And when they win, it appears as though the victory belongs to someone else entirely. The beauty of this method is that you remain untouched by backlash. When blame is assigned, it lands elsewhere. When rewards are given, they're accepted by others while your influence grows unnoticed. In the end, the silent warrior walks away with what truly matters, enduring power that does not need recognition to survive. Most people are terrified of confrontation, not because they lack the ability to fight, but because they fear the cost. They fear losing relationships, losing reputation, or losing comfort. This fear is exactly why calculated offense is such an effective weapon. It is not about reckless attacks or impulsive outbursts. That's the behavior of amateurs who mistake noise for power. A calculated offense is deliberate, measured, and timed with precision. It strikes not when emotions run high, but when the odds are heavily in your favor. You prepare by studying your opponent's weaknesses, waiting for the moment when they are exposed and vulnerable. Then you strike in a way that leaves them unable to retaliate without harming themselves. Sometimes the blow is direct, a truth revealed at the right time, a public stance taken when you know the crowd will side with you. Other times it is indirect, using someone else's voice to deliver the message, or arranging events so the damage appears self-inflicted. The calculated offense is not about constant aggression. It's about selective aggression. You are not a storm that destroys everything in sight, but a surgeon's scalpel cutting only where it matters most. Each move has a purpose: to protect your position, to weaken a threat, or to send a message that you cannot be crossed without consequence. In a world where most avoid conflict at all costs, being willing and able to strike with precision makes you both feared and respected. And once people realize you will not hesitate to defend yourself with intelligence and force, they will think twice before standing in your way. A calculated offense is as much about psychology as it is about action. The real strike begins long before the moment you reveal it. It begins in silence, in the gathering of information, in the careful observation of patterns others think are invisible. You watch how they speak when they are confident and how they react when they are cornered. You note their allies, their ambitions, their fears. This patience is your camouflage, the appearance of harmlessness, the mask of neutrality. Then, when the time comes, your offense does not just hit the body, it hits the mind. It is not enough to win an exchange. You aim to plant doubt, to make them question themselves in ways that linger long after the confrontation ends. A well-timed remark in front of the right audience can cause them to rethink their own confidence. A subtle revelation of their hypocrisy can fracture their alliances. You do not simply destroy, you destabilize. This is the quiet brilliance of the calculated offense. It forces your opponent to fight shadows, to burn their energy, defending against attacks that may never come. Meanwhile, you remain calm, unshaken, watching as they dismantle themselves. People will call you cold for this, and they will be right. But cold is not cruel. Cold is controlled. In the end, this form of offense is not about feeding your ego or proving a point. It is about ensuring that you are never an easy target, that those who might wish to harm you know there will be a price, and that the price will be exacted with precision, not rage. The beauty of a calculated offense is that it leaves no trace of desperation. You do not rush in swinging wildly, hoping for a lucky blow. You choose the battlefield, the timing, and even the audience. Sometimes, the most devastating strike is not an open confrontation, but a quiet shift in the balance of power. You might withdraw your support from a project at the exact moment it is most vulnerable, or release a truth at the moment it will cause maximum doubt. The offense is never about theatrics, it's about results. A loud attack warns your enemy and rallies their defenses. A silent, precise offense confuses them, makes them paranoid, and turns their own network against them. This is why restraint is a weapon in itself. You may hold an advantage for months, even years, without using it, letting your opponent believe they are untouchable. Then, with one move, you alter their reality in a way they cannot undo. The calculated offense does not seek applause or recognition. In fact, the less they know it was you, the better. Let them think it was fate, coincidence, or their own mistakes. That way, they will never know where the next strike will come from, only that it could come at any time. Fear of the unknown will always be more crippling than fear of the known. And when your offense achieves this, you do not need to fight again. Your reputation will fight for you, standing as a silent warning to anyone who might underestimate you. To become untouchable is not to be invisible, nor to be feared by everyone you meet. It is to exist in a space beyond their reach, where neither praise nor criticism can shake your ground. Most people spend their lives trying to control how others see them, yet in doing so, they chain themselves to those very opinions. Becoming untouchable means cutting that chain without hesitation. It begins with removing the hooks others have in you, the need for validation, the fear of exclusion, the hunger for recognition. These hooks are invisible until you stop playing the game they keep you in. When you no longer chase the compliment, the insult loses its sting. When you no longer need their invitation, their rejection becomes meaningless. The untouchable are not free because no one ever attacks them. They are free because the attacks have no effect. They have built themselves not as glass towers to be admired, but as mountains that stand unmoved by storms. This does not mean isolation. It means selective engagement. You choose your battles, your alliances, your words, not from fear, but from clarity. And clarity is the true armor. A man who cannot be swayed by flattery will not be lured into traps. A woman who does not fear being disliked cannot be forced into submission. In the end, becoming untouchable is less about power over others and more about mastery over yourself. When you can stand in a room full of enemies and feel no rush of anger, no urge to prove, no itch to please, you will have reached the rarest form of strength, the kind that cannot be taken away, only given up. The path to becoming untouchable is not smooth. It is carved through the rough stone of discipline, self-awareness, and a willingness to endure discomfort. You will be tested the moment you stop bending to please others. Some will call you arrogant. Others will try to provoke you, to find cracks in your resolve. These are not enemies to fear, but mirrors showing you where you still care too much. Every insult that lingers in your mind, every rumor that stirs your emotions, is a sign of where you are still vulnerable. The untouchable study these moments not to seek revenge, but to remove the power those moments have over them. This requires an internal rewiring. You must learn to let silence be your answer, to let patience be your shield, to let results be your only argument. The weak react instantly, as if every attack demands acknowledgement. The strong wait. Knowing time is the ultimate truth teller. To the untouchable, words are tools, not weapons to be thrown recklessly. They understand that the moment you react out of ego, you've handed control to the other person. This is why their presence feels unsettling to manipulators. There's nothing to grab, no easy button to push. The untouchable move like shadows, visible yet unreachable, aware yet unshaken. Their strength does not shout. It hums quietly beneath the surface, like a deep current pulling everything in its direction without a ripple on the water. Over time, those who once tried to control you will grow weary, not because you defeated them in battle, but because they can no longer find a way to draw you into one. That is the quiet victory of the untouchable, not winning every fight, but becoming a person for whom most fights are unnecessary. The final stage of becoming untouchable is realizing that your strength lies not in what you control, but in what you no longer need to control. When you no longer crave constant recognition, when you no longer flinch at rejection, when you no longer burn energy proving yourself to those who will never understand you, that is when you're truly free. This freedom is not loud or celebratory. It feels almost invisible, as if you have stepped out of the endless marketplace where people trade approval, fear, and flattery. From the outside, others might think you've withdrawn from the world, but the truth is the opposite. You are finally moving through it without chains. People will try to interpret your stillness as weakness, but their confusion is your advantage. They cannot predict a player who refuses to play by the rules they've memorized. In this state, even your silence becomes a weapon, and your presence alone shifts the energy of the room. You're no longer accessible to every request, every demand, every crisis someone tries to drag you into. This doesn't make you cruel, it makes you precise. You decide where your time, energy, and emotions go, and you protect them as fiercely as a king guards his crown. The world rewards those who know their own value without needing constant reminders from others. By becoming untouchable, you send a quiet but undeniable signal. Your worth is not up for negotiation, your peace is not for sale, and your attention is a privilege, not a default. And once you reach this point, You realize the greatest irony. You no longer need to fight for respect because it arrives uninvited, carried in the uneasy silence of those who know they cannot shake you.